Nasrat Haqparast out of the matchup. It was reported on January 5th by Gaston Reino that we have Argentina's own Francisco Prado making a short notice UFC debut, a little bit over a month to get ready for this matchup for the 20-year-old champion of Samurai Fight House. You might have heard of that promotion before. Eileen Perez was a champ over there, made her debut last year. Prado taking on Jamie Mullarkey in this matchup. And if you talk about phenoms in the prospect world, Francisco Prado is one of those fighters. Every win, a finish. He's taken on a varying level of competition, and now he gets to debut against a not necessarily top-rank guy out of Australia, but for Jamie Mullarkey, I'd say he's at least a household name for MMA fans at this point. He's had some absolute barn burners. He had a very contentious win his last time out against Michael Johnson, got dropped really early on in one of the quickest flurries that you're ever going to see out there, and then he rallied back, wins a split decision there. He had a fight of the night in his UFC debut against Brad Riddell. He has a loss to Farhassim. He has a loss to Jalen Turner, where the right hook, the knees, everything kind of took over in that one. But a knockout win over Kama Worthy, where he just put him on skates, and a win over Devontae Smith have really cemented him as an interesting fighter in this lightweight division. So now 3-3 in the UFC since making that debut in 2019 for the guy representing a big-time gym in Australia, Jamie Mullarkey, a training partner of Alexander Volkanovski. A lot of guys on this card can probably say that. But in this matchup, Matt, like, you look at uber prospects coming in very, very young. You think of, like, the Chase Hoopers, the Sage Northcutts. Now we have Francisco Prado. I did a lot of tape study, and a lot of it's readily available. You kind of dissect the record out there of some of his opponents. Combined opponent record of the 11 wins is 61-48, so it is what it is. His best win's probably his last one over Jose Barrios Vargas, who was 13-3. And then I went through his record, and it's kind of a salty 13-3. And then I went through Adrian Peroni, who was 6-0, and it's a really salty win. So you go down through it, you watch a lot of these fights, Matt, and Prado goes through a lot of adversity in some of them, and he ends up winning them all.
This is the weird thing about Jamie Mullarkey, I should say. He's very skilled. He's a good striker. He's a good grappler. He's a good wrestler. He doesn't really have one glaring weakness in his game, except for the intangibles. He's not the fastest guy on the outside. He is a little bit stiff when he throws, and that's going to be the really interesting thing. If Prado can get on the inside, like we have seen some fighters do, and really utilize his boxing, I really do think he can make life hell for Jamie Mullarkey, just because Mullarkey and the style with which he strikes is a lot of straight punches. He hasn't really perfected what I've now just coined the Brian Ortega zone, where it's, hey, my arms are too long for me to punch you. I don't really know what to do when you're close. I'm going to get elbows. If Jamie Mullarkey had some of those attacks that were a little bit more up the middle, I think it would have good synergy with the rest of his game, because he has a lot to deal with when he does get momentum with some of his own strikes. Like I said, he's a little wonky, but he has deceiving power. Like, you wouldn't look at Jamie Mullarkey and think, wow, this guy has, like, decent power from the outside. But when he is able to land clean shots, he does have good effects on his opponents. So I will be curious to see how Prado deals with a lot of that adversity, because that's what I keep on going back to. Prado's probably the more, the flashier out of these two. I guess it doesn't take much to be flashier than Jamie Mullarkey. But if Prado can make this fight, I guess, just over really quick, he should have a great opportunity to. But that seems to be the story with Jamie Mullarkey. He's like a Julian Erosa. He's like a Damon Jackson. Like, if you hit him early, you might be able to finish him. But if he does get over that initial threshold, if he can weather that first storm, Jamie Mullarkey then gets to show you all of the skills that he does have, and he becomes a much more difficult fight as a result.
Well, Matt, for Francisco Prado, for this uber prospect, you go back and you watch his fights again. His last time out, he took on Blue Jays ace Jose Barrios Vargas, and in that matchup, they're fighting in a laser show. Like, I didn't really understand that one. There's lights
like a bowling
going.
Alley.
I thought, like, is this like a video effect they added on after the fact? But the lights are on the guy, so it was there. But you watch that fight, and I mean, he moves a lot. You go back and you watch a lot of these Prado fights. I think he's added an element of, I move my head, I move my body all the time to try and show different looks to disguise what I'm going to do. But when he goes out there and he decides to throw, he throws everything into his shots. And he throws hooks, he throws a lot of looping shots, he throws a lot of really good kicks. And he ends up going out there and just has some crazy striking blitzes. But I went through and I watched a lot of these fights. The fight against Peroni was for the belt. That's when he challenged for it. It was on one of those really slippery mats. The other thing was Samurai Fight House. Some fights are in really small cages. Some fights are in the biggest cage you've ever seen in your entire life. So against Peroni in that one, I mean, he goes out there, he's dancing on the balls of his feet again. He gets caught by a guillotine. The whole first round he's in a guillotine. And then the second round he gets the takedown, he goes out there and he looks really good. But in a lot of these fights, like, Prado's takedown defense has been tested, and it's not that great. Prado tends to tire as the first round goes on, and then in the second round, the wheels completely fall off. And going through a lot of these fights, the fight that he had against Hugo Nogueira, which they list as it's Hugo and then his nickname, if you do go back and watch the fight, in that one, Hugo looked like a blown-up bantamweight with a little bit of a belly. And he was completely outstriking Prado. He ends up going out there in the first round, just absolutely blitzes him. And then Prado comes back in the second round. You might say, well, Craig, he's a young guy. He's 20. He's won every single fight. He's won them all by finish, and some of them in the second round and further on. Yes, he has, but he hasn't really taken on the greatest level competition. And I just think parts and parcels, they're all there for Prado. I think this is way too big of a matchup for him against Mullarkey.
It might be, but I think we're discrediting Prado a little bit too much, if I'm being honest. Every fight with Jamie Mullarkey he gets finished early, or at least gets clipped and hurt early, or he's able to weather that storm and look really good in round 2, round 3. Prado's going to bring that exact game plan that we've seen so many other opponents bring into the cage with Mullarkey before, and Mullarkey does lose some of those fights that we've seen. It's like when we talked about Rinat Fakhretdinov when he fought Brian Battle. We said he was a bad striker. He would out-drop Brian Battle every single time he touched him. I think with Prado, with his youth and with some of the intangibles he does have, with some of the X factors he's had outside the ring, I don't think that we can say, oh, Prado, this is a step too far. Just because with Mullarkey, it's been a lot of close fights. He does get hurt in a lot of these fights too, and if Prado hurts him early, he could definitely get the finish. I just think with Mullarkey, he has to be able to weather that early storm, and sometimes he can do that, even though he does seem to get hurt quite a bit in these fights, and other times he's not able to, and he gets finished quite early. I'm just going to be really curious to see where Mullarkey is in his career, because Mullarkey is kind of one of those fringe, like 25 to 20 guys. I'd say he's not necessarily close to the top 15, but he's going to offer a difficult fight to pretty much anybody.
Well, we'll see if Prado can go out there. He loves to utilize those typical freestyle wrestling takedowns. He'll go double, and then he'll switch over to a single. Has a lot of success there. Takedown defense isn't great from Prado, but he has some good sweeps, but he can also get held in position for quite a bit in his fights. So we'll see how that translates against a primary striker in Jamie Mullarkey, a guy who can switch it up every now and again. The odds do favor Jamie Mullarkey in the matchup, about a -250 favorite. We have a look at the Topology mats. Vote, surprise us there to you. I have no idea where these are going to be because, again, Prado, 11-0, all finishes. He's only 20 years old. I'm going to say over under 70% Mullarkey, but I really have no idea.
I think it'll be over just because these have been quite ridiculous.
And it is slightly over. So 617 total votes, 74% Mullarkey, 57% by decision, 34% by knockout. For the 26% that are Prado, 67% by knockout. I think this is going to be the most lukewarm take I've ever had. I think Prado wins. He'll get the knockout over Mullarkey. I don't see him knocking out Jamie Mullarkey in this fight at all. I'm surprised that Francisco Prado is matched up with Jamie Mullarkey. It blew my mind after I watched the tape that this is a real fight that's going to happen in the UFC.
This is where I zag a little bit. I just think with Mullarkey, he is that slow starter, and we've seen him get cracked so many times. So when your opponent matches that exact archetype of a fighter who can take advantage of it, I could see him winning, and winning early by stoppage. I really could with Prado. I think he does have the decided hand speed advantage if he is able to get on the inside. I worry about him eating those shots on his way in, and I do worry about what he's going to look like after the first round. So for those reasons, I do have Mullarkey, but I've just seen Mullarkey get off to those weird wonky starts where he doesn't look great, he's not throwing as much volume as you'd like, and he eats a lot of big shots. So I think there is a world where Prado can go out there and get the finish, but I do have Mullarkey.
Both of us going with New South Wales' own Jamie Mullarkey to get the win in this lightweight division. Title fight up at the top of this card in the division between Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Name Picks. We always say, let's get into it.